and that when he was trying to have a discussion with, say, the sales director about missed deadlines, he wasn't having a personal argument with her. He was actually really saying, look at the impact that this is having on the organization as a whole, the way you're letting people down, and you're creating soft holes, soft places where the company becomes vulnerable and we are in danger. So in order to help him to do that in his, quotes, confrontations, I had to work with him on his own organization in the mind. What was he thinking? How was he patterning all the different activities and the responsibilities and accountabilities and processes of the organization? How was he patterning these to make a coherent model, even if he wasn't doing it consciously, on which he then based his behavior? Now, once we began to get to a stage where he was able to see that his behavior and his instincts were not simply personal things, nor were those of other people, as soon as he was able to begin to think like that, he's then able to begin to explore what his experience of working with other people is telling him about their model in the mind, how the square in his mind related to the triangle in the staff member who he was working with. And what was important here was, rather than trying to have a competition, the World Cup of squares against triangles, what he was learning to do was to develop working hypotheses, which says, it seems to me that so-and-so is the case. You're reading the evidence like this, which seems to me to ignore this factor and that factor. Let me test this hypothesis by asking you for evidence. And so by developing hypotheses and testing them, he actually begins to have a different way of relating. He stops taking for granted the organization as a whole, which his previous experience right the way up from probably when he was at infant school or whatever the equivalent was in America, kindergarten, has brought him to a position where he's really having to develop new thinking, new ways of working, which are not soft, as Lorna just said. These are hard, tough, demanding things, self-critical, but also critical about locating oneself within a working, living organization, which is dynamic and alive in the kind of the way the new sciences are helping us to understand scientific structures and makeup of not only the world, but of the universe as a whole. Lorna, do you have any comments and thoughts? Because you also have your own case study, which you would like to relate to this discussion.
Yeah, I think this one comment that was just coming to my mind there was this move away from Newtonian principles to seeing the organisation as living, dynamic, alive. There's a lot of anxiety around that, and probably created around the confusion. It's hard for people to let go of that.
Yeah.
And when one often is faced with having to look at it, it can be at a time when things may have collapsed or have started to go wrong. And so there's anxiety around anyway. And the process of letting go of that thinking involves getting to a place of releasing fear and anxiety in order to embrace, other, not just other worldviews, but in order to be able to see what is actually coming at you and to be able to reframe it. So
further on, because here I think is the kind of thing which you've just been talking about, and I wanted the words to go on to the last slide. I think this is a wonderful picture, by the way.
It probably resonates with a lot of people at the moment.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think it's that phrase, whole organisation issue. It isn't just a departmental issue. It may start in a department. It may be one department or one person that ignites it. But what happens in one department affects other departments. And this is looking at how all of our parts fit together. So it does require a collective pause for reflection. And the more and more I hear from my clients how they're experiencing the frustrations of everything being connected in their organisations and actually needing to work much more closely together in order to get the results that they need, to get the coherency and effectiveness across the organisation.
Yeah.
So I think, these kinds of new principles to see the organisation and its stakeholders as interconnected living systems raises huge questions for the future of every function, to stop the silo-based thinking as well. But what is the future of marketing? How does marketing anticipate the demands of these living systems that it's connected to in the future? How does finance account? What is the role of finance in accounting for?
I think that's a very that word account. You see, if you probe what the word account means and where it comes from, it means telling a story. So finance and accounting is a way of telling a story about the whole organisation. But it may not be the whole story if you only relate it to finance.
And that's right. And so you could see that finance actually has a role potentially in connecting up parts of telling the story and accounting across the organisation, which is probably a world away from what many financial controllers have been doing at the moment. In fact, I'm working with a financial controller at the moment, and interestingly, he's moving into a role where he's been looking more strategically at the future of the organisation. But it is what we are talking about is how he is creating a new story for the organisation, so he can feel intuitively that his role is actually moving away from numbers into a role of accounting in a way that you have just described. So I think there are lots of new questions here.
Yeah. Should we talk about our offer for people who want to take this further?
Okay.
At the present moment, they're basically as energy offers, aren't they?
Yeah. So on the 10th of June, we have a one-day workshop